Gaming. Gaming never changes. Since the dawn of the Electric Age, when the forefathers first discovered the entertaining power of bits and pixels, feuds have been waged about everything from graphics to control schemes to pure processing power. Often this was fairly benign, simple skirmishes and arguments. But in the early 21st century, the violent nature of gamers could contain themselves no longer.
Nuclear launch detected.
We don't know who launched the first attack, Brotherhood of Sony, the Microsoft Army, or Mario's children, but we do know the result. A worldwide cataclysm. It swept across the land, cutting down hardcore and casual gamers alike. The Jewel players and WoW players buried alongside each other in mass graves. Those who refused to join sides were exiled, forced to live underground. But one man dares to continue to speak his mind. Though keeping his identity secret, he puts his life on the line to broadcast from his undisclosed location deep beneath the earth, where he can combat the propaganda spread by the fanboy factions, unclouded by nostalgia, loyalty, or prejudice. For gamers had succeeded at destroying the world, but gaming never changes.
If you could get a group of gamers together and ask them about the worst video game ever made, what kind of answers would you get? Action 52, Superman 64, Final Fantasy 13, something else with a number after the name? Or what about a game so bad that people who've never even seen the system it's on still say it's the worst ever? Just mentioning this game's name in the presence of others to cause them to moan in pain, break out laughing, or just run away in terror. Can you guess what it is? I'll give you a hint. It's a game about a boy who makes friends with an alien with unusual powers. Okay, bad example. A game about a boy helping a character with supernatural powers escape from the people who want to capture and study it. No. A human and an alien share a connection that everybody else thinks is taboo in a game that remains controversial to this day. Oh, son of... It's E.T., okay? Now, it's common knowledge nowadays that most games based on movies, how shall I put it, suck more cock than a French rooster puree. But back then, there was really no stigma against them, and a lot of the best games for the system actually came from movies like Indiana Jones and Star Wars. So the idea of a game based on the most popular film of the year was nothing unusual. But you may ask yourself, how in the holy flying fuck nuggets are they going to make a game about an alien botanist who gets left behind on Earth and makes friends with a boy named Elliot? Oh, well here's how. Take the scene where E.T. is found in a ditch, combine that with the main plot of E.T. building a space phone, and throw in some Reese's Pieces for good measure. And voila! You have yourself a steaming pile of crap! In summer of 1982, Steven Spielberg released his sci-fi masterpiece E.T., a movie which needs no introduction because it became an absolute fucking phenomenon, and it had nothing to do with gay vampires, blue cat people, or teenage wizards. So in a desperate effort to cash in on this worldwide craze, Atari optioned the film for a video game that would be released in time for Christmas of the same year. Atari assigned the game to Howard Scott Warshaw, a designer who was responsible for the video game adaptation of Spielberg's previous masterpiece, Raiders of the Lost Ark, as well as one of the best reviewed games and the best-selling original title for the system, Yar's Revenge. So, how did a project that had so much going for it earn the description of the worst game ever made? Well, to answer this question, let's start by just looking at it. Even as Atari games go, it just looks dull. There's almost no shading or gradients, which are common in a lot of other Atari games. Most of the rest of the map is populated by these huge black areas that are apparently holes, which, well, the manual calls them wells, but they're just giant pits that all look the same. And the other area is ancient Rome? Checking the manual again, apparently it's Washington, D.C. Well, yeah, that's how it looks now after the nukes hit it, but not back in 1982. I guess this game is just ahead of its time. But yeah, that's it. That's the whole game. 7 screens. I guess there are a lot of Atari games that had less than this, but it really is underwhelming, especially for what's laughingly described as an adventure game. Graphics aside, the game is actually pretty damn complicated. Most Atari games were fairly self-explanatory. Shoot down the missiles, dodge the cars, rape the woman without getting an arrow in the head. But E.T. is the kind of game that if you never read the manual, you would have no fucking clue what you're supposed to be doing. And I think that's the main problem with this game. People are lazy fucks. What's this? Some sort of game book instruction manual pamphlet thingamabobber? Who fuck that? Who buys games to read? I want to kill some shit. But if you take the time to actually read the manual, yeah, it's an ordeal, get over it. The game really isn't that confusing. What you're trying to do is find and collect 3 pieces of E.T.'s space phone in order to call the rescue ship. The pieces are hidden in one of the 20 holes that are scattered all over the map. And yeah, don't these things just look so obvious as pieces of an intergalactic communicator? I mean, they look more like... I don't even know what the hell they are. What is that, a speed booster from Metroid? Superman's flying cape? UFO shooting lightning bolts on a display stand? Stop reminding me of games I'd rather be playing! Due to the simple laws of probability, your odds of finding one of these phone pieces are pretty low, but your first thought is that you just have to try every single hole on the map. There is a way around this though, which I'll get into in just a bit. You also have to be really careful maneuvering around these holes. If even 1 pixel of E.T.'s body touches the hole, you're going in. And one thing you'll discover very quickly is that getting out of these holes is about as reliable as your guns in Alpha Protocol. Most of the time you'll immediately drop right back in after flying out, and you have no choice but to try again. In fact, that's exactly what the manual says. If you can't get out of a hole, keep trying until you do. Gee, thanks a lot, Mom.
Don't talk back to me.
Sorry. The key is to go to the left or right when trying to exit the hole, since trying to go out the top will invariably drop you right back in. As you explore the map, you can also collect dots which you'll never guess are actually supposed to be Reese's Pieces. Hey, fun fact, did you know that the creators of the movie originally wanted Elliot to lure E.T. with M&Ms? But the Mars company declined the offer because they thought the movie would bomb. So instead, they went with their competitor Reese's, and sales of the candy skyrocketed. I wonder if somebody got fired for that mistake. Your only threat in this game are the scientist and FBI agent that'll chase you around the map. If the scientist catches you, he'll drag you off for examination, but since apparently they've never heard of doors or walls in the ancient ruins of 1982 DC, you can just walk out. It's annoying, but it's nowhere near as bad as the FBI agent, who is a fucking asshole. Whatever you do, do not let this guy touch you, because if you do, he'll confiscate a piece of your phone and drop it in a random hole. That's annoying enough, but just to be an asshole, if you don't have any phone pieces on you, he steals your candy! Dude! I know you're on a government salary and all, but just buy some of your own! In order to avoid them, you can run, or use your special alien superpowers to blast them into dust, or just cause them to turn away. By selecting the Send Humans Back icon that for some reason looks like a Roman numeral 3, you can cause any humans to retreat to their building in DC. Now, you're probably wondering how you can select your abilities on a one-button controller. Well, it's actually kind of a creative feature. As you move around on the map, the icon on the top of the screen will change relative to your position. This means it's easy to tell exactly what will happen when the button is pressed. But the downside of this is also quite obvious. You have very little control over what ET can do. If you want to use a specific power, you have to either remember where that icon's zone is, or hope you get lucky as you're running away from the FBI hoping to find a Send Humans Back icon. In fact, most of the game will just become a scavenger hunt as you search for the proper spot on the map that will let you phone home. As I mentioned before, the most important power-up icon you can find is this one, that causes any holes with phone pieces to flash, which is immensely helpful and almost completely negates the blind shell game of checking into every pit and wasting all of your energy coming back out. By standing on this icon, you can eat one of your Reese's Pieces to restore a tiny bit of energy, but if you stand on a Call Elliot zone and, well, call Elliot, he'll come and take your Reese's Pieces and you'll get more points at the end of the round. But if you call him when you have 9 of them, he'll actually come and give you a piece of the phone. Honestly, there's really not that much else to say about this game. It's so short you can beat it in about 5 minutes as long as you know what you're doing, and at that point it's all about trying to get a high score for the number of rounds you can complete. And yeah, playing this game, I can totally understand why people would be pissed off about it. I mean, I get it. I know how to play the game. I usually like adventure games, but it's just not very fun. It's basically a giant scavenger hunt with randomly placed treasures and boring gameplay. It's bad, but I would never call it the worst video game ever made. In fact, I don't even really hate this game. I actually kind of pity it. I feel sorry that everybody picks on it. I mean, it almost had potential, but because of its short development cycle, it never even had a chance. The movie came out in mid-June of 1982, and Atari secured the rights in late July. Since they wanted to have the game ready for release in time for the Christmas shopping season, that only gave Warsaw 5.5 weeks to take the game from concept to completion. To put that in perspective, it took him 7 months to create Yar's Revenge. Warsaw only took the job because Spielberg asked for him specifically, and he felt he would enjoy the challenge of making a game in a little over a month. Well, also they offered him a trip to Hawaii. Atari even skipped doing any focus group testing because they figured the name alone would be enough to carry the game, and in a way, they were right. E.T. enjoyed best-selling status in its first few months, eventually selling over 1.5 million units. Unfortunately, in a move of sheer hubris, Atari actually produced more copies of E.T. than there were consoles, expecting the game to be a system seller or people to buy multiple copies of it. Critical response of the game was almost universally negative, and stores all over were reporting returns because the game was just so bad. Stores were discounting the game repeatedly and simply could not get rid of it. Atari reported substantial losses on the game, upwards of $100 million, and that was back in 1983. Eventually, the company took 3 million copies of the games and other unsold consoles and dumped them in a landfill in the New Mexico desert, which is where I found my copy. Is the game bad? Yes, it sucks. Everybody knows it sucks, but through no fault of its own. Making fun of this game is like making fun of a retarded kid playing chess. Sure, it's not going to be very good, but it never really had a chance in the first place. And when people bet on him to win, like Atari bet on this game to be the next Space Invaders, they were literally throwing their money into a giant hole. E.T. and Pac-Man are picked out for being the poster child for the video games crash of 1983, but crappy games have been coming out for the console for years at this point. The real blame here is on the publishers and the marketing tactics that went toward overhyping and over-promoting this game to dust. It's no wonder the industry crashed if this is the kind of stupid business practices companies pull, but you don't blame the kid, and you don't blame the game. And just like the retard's parents still love him, Warsaw loves his creation as well. He's not afraid to talk about how much it sucks. And besides, how many other hundreds of games for the Atari 2600 are still discussed today? In fact, he actually finds it kind of amusing that he was responsible for both one of the best reviewed games on the system and one of the worst. So why don't you have a little room in your heart for the little cartridge nobody loved, and I'll see you on the next broadcast from the Video Game Bunker.